Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us, which is hard to believe, our Q2 Marco mFiles User Group quarterly webinar. Really appreciate everybody's attendance here today, and I'm sure you'll find the content that Tracy and Corey will be going through of much value. Couple housekeeping items before I turn things over to Tracy and Corey. Everybody is in listen-only mode for the webinar. We have quite a few people on the webinar here today. We will be recording this webinar, but if you do have questions, please use the chat window, and you can ask questions at any time throughout the presentation here today, and we will address those questions live as we're going through the content. If you have people in your organization that are unable to join us today, like I mentioned, we will be recording this, and a recorded version will be sent out. At the end of the webinar, we will be drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card for everybody who is in attendance today. And so best of luck to all of you on that drawing. With that, I will turn it over to you, Tracy.
Thank you, Kurt, and thank you everybody for taking the time to join us. We're always excited to be able to bring you value quarterly. Today's focus is going to be on a few pieces within mFiles, really starting first with some basic troubleshooting tips. We surveyed our service team and really evaluated the tickets that we're seeing come into the board, and thought there would be a lot of advantage to really walk through a lot of the things that we see day in and day out to aid you and your team's just quicker resolution of those items and a method to be able to solve those. So we'll walk through those. Moving then forward, we're going to tap into mFiles search engines. So mFiles does have various search engines. Corey is going to go through not only that, but overall general maintenance to keep your system in tip-top shape. We're going to wrap up today with the release notes and release updates from May and June, and then walk you through how to access our e-learning content along with the webinar recordings, as Kurt mentioned. I would like to mention also at the end of the webinar, you're going to be redirected to a SurveyMonkey. We do really welcome the input that everybody can give us. We want to make these webinars very purposeful, and anything that you're interested in seeing or learning more about, we do look at those to make sure that we can incorporate those into future webinars. So if you can take 5 minutes to just add to that content, we would greatly appreciate it. So getting started, we're going to focus on, again, just basic troubleshooting guidance. I'm going to leave these slides up here. Again, we're recording it, and we're also going to have a PDF overview available for you guys to kind of go back into review and leverage as kind of a knowledge base if you come across some of these errors or your users come across these errors. The first one that we see quite frequently is reference to the RPC server unavailable. This typically means that the computer, the endpoint, is not able to reach the mFiles server. There can be various reasons of why. Maybe the mFiles server is offline. There's computer issues, DNS issues, even network latency can cause a message as such. Really, the first level of support to engage your IT team, if you have in-house or third-party provider, to just validate the workstation can definitely see that mFiles server. Another message received is referring to PDF that it just contains a JavaScript message. This is just an informational message, so nothing to be alarmed of. It is just indicating that the item being checked out, the PDF being checked out, contains JavaScript. There is a way to suppress that through a client-side registry update. So again, if your users are getting that message, it's just completely informational, nothing to be alarmed of. And if it is happening frequently, you can suppress that message. Moving on, another area that we are seeing activity on and tickets and questions around is not able to find documents that have been scanned in. A lot of those individuals and implementations, we do leverage the Marco barcode application, where you're actually embedding a QR page or leading off your assembly of scan pages with a QR page. Sometimes it can be that that QR page has diminished in quality over time, or simply the assembly is not properly properly laid out, where it can't recognize the QR code or the directions that it had been assembled as, such as a patch code, making sure that the directive page is behind that. You know, there's certain other strategies to really walk through this process. I do know that we have a working guide and a help guide that is placed in all of the vaults that really walk through the technical team, the options to be able to walk through where the scan actually goes, from the point of the device to the first stop at the collection folder, moving on then really for collection into M files. So taking a look at error logs and also the directories that are involved in the process to understand where it's really being held up are all steps that are available to be able to navigate through the issue at hand. For those that are not using the Marco barcode application, or for certain scenarios where you're not using that, just making sure that the device can go and reach the location that is necessary for collection. It could be as simple as a password that is being leveraged to authenticate that location. Maybe the password has changed. So just ensuring that all of the steps prior to actually getting into M files so you can process and index it, all of those steps leading up to that are checked. Another message that is received is just the general access denied. Sometimes this is intended behavior, and it's intended because the user who is trying to access the information truly does not have access by intent to either the data, the document, the object that they're looking for to search for. So checking with your M files administrator or even us to help you navigate through of why you cannot access that. And then going through the proper channels to be able to request access this if needed and change. So making sure you have the correct permissions and navigating through that to make sure that again, the data you're trying to access is definitely viewable and should be viewable by you. A SQL lock error. So M files not only can run inside of Firebird, but a lot of you are in a SQL environment with a backend database. There's a lot of activity that goes on between SQL and M files, and even object refreshes. So if users are getting a general SQL lock error, it is just having a higher load and activity of traffic back and forth to be able to update the data that might be necessary. A lot of times just giving it a little bit of time, going back in and having the user retry what they were attempting to do. A lot of times that in itself will solve for the issue. If you have to take some other steps, taking the vault offline and online, which will disconnect users, but only very briefly, can ensure that whatever is holding up that system really kind of gets a restart. If you have to go one step further, restarting the SQL server and the mFiles application server where applicable can resolve it as well. If it continues to happen, we can look at patterns with the object refreshes. Some of you have window task schedulers that are really bringing in that object data quicker and more timely than what the system defaults are. So just making sure that we have a good balance there to ensure that not only the user queries and requests that they're placing on, but really the back end SQL needs are being addressed. Sometimes it can just be an indicator that where we have to provide more resources to the server as well. Overall poor performance. Really, again, a general item that we take it as just really peeling back the onion layers. Starting with your IT support team to make sure that we rule out any specific PC system performance and resource availability. If that is running optimal, is there antivirus that are running scans? Is it scanning the mFiles directories that really should be disqualified from the AV side of the configuration? Making sure that the mFiles server resources as well as SQL resources are adequate. With growth, these are things that should be reevaluated. And some of those maintenance checks that Corey will review will address and keep these on the forefront to make sure that your system remains optimal and running efficiently. There is a way to check network latency between the mFiles client and mFiles server application. There's actually a button right inside of the client that you can test your speed. A lot of us are working remotely. And in that case, maybe your internet provider speed is not as optimal as being in office. So making sure that we're testing, again, that endpoint where it's not necessarily specific to mFiles, but it's more generally just connection to the network from being off-site. If individuals cannot save to mFiles, at times Windows is remembering the last directory that was used to save. So just make sure in most simplest steps that the intended location of where that document, if you're doing a file save as, make sure you're navigating down through the vault and probably even into a view if a user is going that deep adequately, making sure that it does exist. So a lot of times, again, it's saving those last settings and just confirming that where you are needing it to go does exist. Browsing directly to that virtual M drive. So a lot of cases in environments, that is the virtual physical M or virtual M drive labeled M. In some clients, it's a different drive because that drive letter was selected. But just make sure that you're navigating through just like you would do a file save as from any other application to any other network location. As a last resort, know that if you're not able to save as directly in mFiles, you have at your disposal the ability to save it anywhere else, maybe on your desktop, on a local drive, and then leverage the drag drop or right click save into mFiles feature that is available from the menu. There is at times a message that comes up to users indicating no more concurrent licenses are available. Licensing structure, remember we have 3 different types of licenses available in mFiles: a read-only license, concurrent license, and a named license. A read-only and named are dedicated to a specific user. It is reserved for them. In a concurrent license environment, that license is shared amongst multiple people, and it is able to be acquired first come, first serve. So in those environments where you are licensed under the concurrent model, users, you can train them to ensure that they're logging out of mFiles once they are completed with their task of the day. That will then allow for that license to be consumed by others. They must log out, and again, in the newer client configuration and UI, logging out is quite easy through that user menu on the upper right-hand side. The other benefit that logging out has, if you can develop that and train your users to log out, is that it will notify the users if they have any documents checked out. That is also very critical to ensure that any changes that they've made to documents are saved into the vault and within the backups that are being done in your system. It also ensures that if it is a document that's being collaborated on, that users have the ability, or other users have the ability, to open it up in also in edit mode. So kind of a two-step benefit. Not only are you freeing up licenses, but you're ensuring that the user is notified of things that are checked out. I will also state, even in a non-concurrent license setup, logging out has that same benefit where they will be notified of items that they have checked out that haven't been saved. Another message that is received is the MF status application is not running. This is usually presented when the user is trying to save a document into M files or just access M files. I've displayed the steps here to be able to solve for it, where you're simply just launching the show status application, which will completely resolve the message of the M file status application is not running. Typically just during startup, sometimes we do see where that status application does not auto start. Could be because of other processes that are also trying to begin their startup mode. And moving to the last piece of basic troubleshooting is inconsistent or incorrect search results. First and foremost, ensuring that what the user is searching for is accurate or are aligning and correct to whatever the user is looking for. If they're leveraging an advanced search component, making sure they have the right properties and parameters within their search terms to be able to bring back the result that they're expecting. We're going to touch on this on the maintenance side, but rebuilding of full text and metadata indexes. This is a maintenance piece and something that M-Files does recommend on a scheduled basis to go ahead and rebuild those indexes as a general good practice. Sometimes, again, if results are inconsistent, rebuilding those indexes will resolve for that. Other times it can be because the system has now surpassed the level of some of the built-in data search engine called DT search. M-Files does have some additional search engines, and I won't steal Corey's thunder. He'll do a fabulous job going through other options that you can begin to look at if, again, the searches are coming back inconsistently, even slower searches. There are 2 other options available for you. So at this point, that kind of wraps up our basic troubleshooting. Again, I know a lot of information. It could be a little bit overwhelming. This will be recapped here in a PDF and a knowledge share with that recording, so you guys can kind of come back and review this as needed. But looking to really put you guys in the driver's seat of things that we see frequently, and an opportunity for you to really get your users up and functioning as quickly as possible. So before I turn it over to Corey, I'll pause there to see if there's any questions that have come in.
Yes, we do have one question, Tracy and Corey. It says, we have issues with M-Files hijacking the M drive when we already have that drive used. Is there a way to direct M-Files to use a different drive?
There is a way to allow M-Files to use a different drive. It's actually in the desktop settings area. I would be happy to follow up on that inquiry and also add it to our PDF overview of the webinar to walk through the steps of changing that drive permanently.
Perfect. That is all the questions for now.
All right. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Corey, and he's going to go through the search engines.
Thank you so much, Tracy. As Tracy had previously mentioned, mFiles does support multiple search utilities. Some are more robust than others. These also give you more flexibility in what you can do with searches in regards to faceted searching, things like that. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Those three search engines are going to be DT Search, mFiles Smart Search, and Micro Focus Idle. As Tracy had previously stated, DT Search is the default search utility that is provided on every mFiles installation. The mFiles Smart Search and Micro Focus Idle, again, are more robust. And depending on the platform of mFiles that you are on, you might already have access to these utilities. They just might not be in play. Now, like I had stated, DT Search is included with every mFiles installation. There's nothing you have to configure. It is once mFiles is installed, this is the default engine that you get. Uh, it's very low system requirements, very simple. Now, with DT Search, you can only have one indexer per vault. And what that means is when a new object is created, the application server has something running called MF Indexer. That MF Indexer will grab that object, index the metadata and file contents of it, and then store that in the actual index database. With other utilities, you can actually have more than one indexer running at a time if you are adding an absorbent amount of objects to the vault. So if you're having a lot of user interaction, adding hundreds of objects to the vault at any given time, multiple indexers will actually speed up the index process. Now, the one caveat to DT search is the index file size cannot be larger. It is recommended that it does not exceed 2 gigabytes. In the world we live in now, where more and more companies are going digital and growing their digital platform, this is not a very large threshold to work with. So we have mFiles has put a bigger consensus on looking at Smart Search and Micro Focus Idle to support those larger indexes. Now, Smart Search, it is more memory based search. It's more of an instant search results. You might notice that when running a search with DT search, you are getting the spinning wheel where it's not giving you results in a timely manner. With Smart Search and Micro Focus Idle, you will receive a more instantaneous search results list. High availability, it also supports, as does Idle, faceted search, which I will demo later. And also, it is no extra installation is necessary with Smart Search. Essentially, it's a configuration inside mFiles admin that will point your indexes to Azure, actually. So I'll show you a quick diagram here. So you have your application server and your indexer, and you've got the clients and the Vault database. How indexing works with Smart Search. Once the MF indexer gets that object and actually indexes it on the application server, that file is not stored on the application server. That is actually handed off to an Azure environment for storage there. Now, the only caveat to Smart Search is if you lose internet connection, you will not be able to use faceted search or the Google search, as we would call it, at the top of the client. You could still utilize the advanced search by specifying class is invoice, customer is ABC company, because that data is actually stored in the Vault database, whether that be SQL or Firebird, but the search bar at the top will not return results if you are using Smart Search if you lose a data connection. Now, the other side to this is Micro Focus Idle. Now, Micro Focus Idle is a standalone application that integrates with mFiles. So it's an installation that's multi-server. It's installed and configured separately. Just like in Smart Search, you do have the option for faceted search as well. The system architecture for this can be a little involved. Now, the nice thing about Idle is depending on your build, you can grow this pretty exponentially. And another huge plus to Idle is it can actually do incremental backups of the index data. Now, how Idle is set up, you have your mFiles application server, you have a front-end server, or also known as a controller, and then you have back-end servers. Now, depending on the number of objects in your vault or the size of your indexes, would greatly differentiate your system architecture. For example, this diagram is referencing 3 backend servers, 1 front-end server, and the application server. So for Idle, that this installation would be 5 separate servers. Now, the front-end server is going to host what's called the DIH and the DAH and the daily content engine. The daily content engine is almost like a cache directory. Everything that is initially searched or indexed will hit the daily content engine. Okay, the back end is where all the main index data is stored. So if we have a backend server that has 5 drives, so it would be D through, we'll say M, that's 5 drives for content engines on a backend server. That one server can support 5 million objects. If you multiply that across 3 backend servers, your total mFiles environment can support 15 million objects. Now, how the architecture all works together, once the mFiles application server receives a new object that needs to be indexed, the MF indexers will take that information, index it, send that over to the daily content engine on the front-end server. The front-end server will pass that to the DIH on the front-end server, and then it would distribute that out across the back-end servers. Now that process actually reverses if you're searching, if you're performing a query in mFiles. The mFiles application server would speak with the front-end server saying, I need information relating to ABC company. And the DAH on the front-end server will actually reach out to the back-end servers and say, give me everything you have relating to ABC company. And that would return to the client. Now, with Idle, that you can actually have more than one MF indexer running. In this diagram, I only have one MF indexer running, but you could have 3, 4, 5 MF indexers running if your organization is so large that you're noticing that there is a delay between the time you put that object into mFiles and the time that you can search for it. Multiple indexers will allow those objects to be indexed faster than if you were just running off one single indexer. Again, the caveat to Idle, there's always a caveat here, is it's a larger build out. So we're dealing with not just one server, the application server that's pointing either to DT Search, the default, or Smart Search Azure. We're looking at a build out that's inclusive of more than one server. So you would look at least one front-end server and one back-end server. Or for organizations large enough, you would look at one front-end server and up to 5 back-end servers. It just depends on the number of objects that you currently have in your mFiles environment. Now, as I had previously stated, with Smart Search and Idle, you do get what's called faceted search. Faceted search is, if you notice on the screen capture here, the scope, object type, and last modified are always defaulted in an mFiles installation. You always see those options under your filters tab. Now on this screenshot, you have class listed. Class is actually a faceted search configuration. Now I can demo for you this faceted search in our demo environment here. As you can see, this is our demo environment. This is essentially almost like an HR vault. Just see if I can move this here. Okay, so if you notice under filters right now, I only have scope, object type, and last modified. Those are the defaulted options that are in there all the time. But let's say I'm going to look for resume. Now, if you notice, I have 57 options relating to resume. Well, based upon searching for resume, these are the classes that are relating to resume. So if I want to say I want to see web resumes, I click it and it lowers my search results down. You can even drill into this even more by a internal user that has actually touched that object, modified it, created that object. So for example, additionally, we can do year. If I want to say, I want to see everything that was from 2015. Again, it lowers my results, but it also provides me month. So I can say, I want to see everything from March. And it allows you to continually drill down to find the object you want. So let's say I'm looking for, I know the last name is Smith, and it drills down even further. And as if you notice, as you actually select these different search facets, the number next to it will drop. So for example, I have for November, and then I want to see Bob. You get this robust utility with mFiles Smart Search and Micro Focus Idle. The configuration for these is very simple. That is something that you can be trained to do yourself, or you can have Marco perform those actions for you. Let me go ahead here if this wants to cooperate. Now, let me go ahead and show you the actual configuration for an mFiles admin for Smart Search and for Micro Focus Idle, as well as the faceted search. So inside your mFiles admin, if you have access to it, under your vault, you will have a configuration section. And then you'll have this advanced vault settings. If you drill into this, this is a little daunting. I understand that. But under here, you'll have the search. If you look at search, this is going to be relating to all of your index data. It's going to tell it mFiles what utility to use. And if you have a utility that supports it, you can actually configure faceted searches from inside here. So for example, the C is your combined index. This is actually listed on every single installation, although it is always disabled. The C is combined index for Micro Focus Idle. Now, if you don't have idle enabled, this will always be set to no. F is going to be your file data. So this is the DT search file data. And if you notice, it'll have the service type listed. It'll say Smart Search, Micro Focus Idle, or DT search. DT search is the only one that actually splits file data and metadata off into two separate. Now with Smart Search, with the configuration for Smart Search, all you need to do is enable it. When you create the index, enable it, and you'll provide an application ID and an API key, and that is it. Now, to get that application ID and API key, let us know if this is something you're interested in. And again, if you're on the platform that supports it, we would just send the vault information to mFiles and they would provide us with this information. Now, once this is all set up and done, you can actually view the status under indexing status. Now, I only have Smart Search listed here because if I return back over here, Smart Search is enabled, DT Search file data is disabled, and DT Search metadata is disabled. So currently Smart Search is the only search utility running in this vault. But under indexing status, if we select it here, it'll tell me if I have unindexed content in the vault. It'll also tell me the last time an index was ran, the batch size, the batch number. So if you're running if you're rebuilding your search indexes, this is a very powerful tool to utilize to check the status of that operation. In previous versions of mFiles, that was an unavailable utility. All right, so now let's move along to reoccurring maintenance. There are a couple different things you can do, or that is recommended that you handle with reoccurring maintenance. Bear with me here for 2 seconds, guys. I'm having to constantly switch screens back and forth here. All right, so for daily checks for any errors, and this is true if you have any issues in regards to errors in mFiles, performance issues, things like that, utilize the Windows Event Viewer. It is your best friend when troubleshooting on it with mFiles. You can actually filter from the Windows Event Viewer. You can filter specifically errors or cautionary items relating to mFiles. So in regards to monthly checks, just keep an eye on, many system administrators already have a utility that monitors system resource usage, but keep an eye on the system resources, just going in, checking the task manager, make sure you're not getting any high thresholds, make sure your drives have enough space. Now, additional monthly checks, clearing replication conflicts. This is actually what they're referring to with replication conflicts is it's not necessarily something that every customer would have. I will show you what that is referencing when I show you where on the actual server to check on these tasks. Now, quarterly is going to be your database optimizations. And then your annual tasks. I would say the annual tasks should, if possible, be done quarterly as opposed to annually or biannually, just to ensure system availability and system uptime. Now, can go here. All right, so let me show you actually where you'll perform these different tasks. So if we have a vault, if you right-click your vault and go to maintenance, this is going to be your optimized database. Now the quick and the thorough, at least quarterly, if possible, I would recommend doing a quick optimization of the database. Now this is also a scheduled job. That thorough, it looks like this, for example, you can check these in your mFiles admin, but optimized database thorough is running, looks like nightly on this one, or excuse me, every Sunday night. Additional maintenance tasks. Verify and repair is a big one. The thorough will take the vault offline if you notice any issues with, I don't want to say search results returning, but any performance issues or any kind of system degradation. Verify and repair can fix those issues. Essentially, it reaches out to the database, checks the database, If there's an inconsistency, it does its best to repair it. Now, the quick will not take the vault offline. If possible, it is recommended that this happen quarterly. The thorough, at least annually or biannually. The thorough, again, will take the vault offline. So over a long weekend, is recommended that occur. Now, the rebuilding of the full text search index. This, if you can do it quarterly, fantastic. If not, at least biannually would be fantastic. This, if you have Smart Search or Micro Focus idle, will not take nearly as long as if you're running a standard DT search. A standard DT search with a large vault could take several weeks to rebuild the full text search index. With idle or Smart Search, a matter of days. We've had experience with Micro Focus idle actually re-indexing 20+ million objects in less than 48 hours. So your uptime is a lot greater with idle and Smart Search as well when you're performing your maintenance tasks. But if you were to select rebuild for full text search index, metadata is just the metadata. The metadata on file contents is actually what it sounds like, everything. It's the file contents and the metadata. And hit start, and then if we go to our indexing status, it probably already finished because this isn't a very big vault. Yeah, it already finished, but it can tell me that it was just performed. All right. Now, if anybody has any questions, please put them in chat and we will address them at the end. I do realize that this is I just bombarded you all with a lot of information. Feel free to reach out to the Marco team if you have any questions on Smart Search, idle, or DT search, or if this is something you want to look at implementing. There's great value in a more robust search utility, especially when the configuration for tools like Smart Search is so minimal. So, but hey, thanks for everyone's time, and I really appreciate everybody taking the time out to meet with us today.
Hey, Corey, we do have one question
Yes.
that came in. How do you find the index size?
The index size, yeah. Let me actually share my other screen here, and I will show you. So based upon the vault, because each individual vault is going to have its own individual index size. So if I right-click the vault and go to Properties, under the Advanced tab, I can see that this is a Firebird database. But if I click Define on that, this looks like NDrive, Server Vaults, Marco Demo CRT. So if I was to pull up NDrive, if you drill down into that, you will have this index folder here. And if you right-click that folder, it'll give you the actual index size of your vault. Like, again, like I had stated, this is a very small vault, so it's less than 4 megabytes. But to revisit that, if it's under SQL, which I don't want to switch that, but if it was under SQL, you would have the same options. It would tell you where the primary data and secondary data is. And you can drill into that, and you're looking for a folder called index. That folder will have your, if it's on Firebird, it'll have your file data, and it'll also have your index data size. Does that answer your question?
I believe it did. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And additionally, if you have any questions about this, you can reach out to the Marco team, and we will provide that data for you if we have remote access to your system.
Wonderful. Thanks, Corey, for the wealth of information. Hopefully that just allows users and organizations to kind of go out and audit their system. And as Corey stated, we would be more than happy to also help you through those processes. Ultimately, you want to make sure that the system remains from a performance standpoint, optimal from user activity. And there are mechanisms within the build of mFiles to be able to do that. As we close here, we're just going to display those release notes. Corey, I see you're still sharing your screen, so if you could just assist me in clicking through those, that would be fabulous. But going back to the May 22 update, for those that use pinning, I know there are customers out there with that. You can now categorize and rearrange those. We also have done webinars on HubShare and the collaboration component that HubShare does bring to mFiles environments. There was some updates to that application. And currently none of our customers are leveraging any of the mFiles managed components. So moving forward into the June release, if you can advance this slide. Again, a HubShare mention here, being able to create HubShare hubs and invite users, and then being able to view media files, previews within mFiles web. I did mention in here there will not be a July release. If you are running mFiles Cloud, that will happen as normal, but due to holiday, the July release will get pushed into the August cycle. So with that, as we go forward into the next slide, one more, Corey, thank you. Just making sure that you're leveraging us. We are here to provide, to help you through. We have a great team with a lot of talent and experience within the solution. So if you are looking to do something new, if something just is not operating like you would expect, we can't help you if we don't know. So definitely, give us a call, send us an email. Those contact numbers are up here. We are happy to help. With that, we also do have the end user training. There is a link that is provided here. It is directly off of our main webpage, going under Enterprise Content Management in mFiles. Not only are the webinars out there, the mFiles knowledge base link is there. So that is hosted direct with mFiles and gives everybody a really good insight into technical documentations and overviews. And in addition to that, some tidbits and short videos that our trainer has put together just with common issues and questions that are presented. So with that, again, a lot of information, hopefully of value to those that had a chance to touch in here today. Kurt, I'm going to roll things over to you for the probably most exciting of the Amazon gift card winner.
Thanks, Tracy and Corey, nice job. Do the drawing here for the $25 gift card. All right, congratulations, Mary M. We'll be sending you an email with the $25 Amazon gift card, and want to thank everybody for attending today.
Thank you, everybody. Have a safe and enjoyable 4th of July. See you next quarter.